Welcome to this yet another Samsara and Nirvana and Buddha nature session. We get to reflect just by the very title of it. It gives us to reflect on where we are, to be real, giving ourselves a reality check, not thinking ourselves in the clouds, and then yet at the same time not feel too dejected, because there's the possibility of Nirvana. And for that, the wherewithals, the factors necessary are all in us. We have a full furnished laboratory within us. Within that is the Buddha nature. So it's really interesting lineup of these topics. They all make perfect sense. So with this inspiration, let's now sit for a few minutes in silence, in settling our mind. Letting go of any bugging thoughts. There may be concerning things about the past, into the future, into here and now, anything else that's bugging you. Merely acknowledge them. Gently ask them to go, at least for this short period of silent meditation. And to facilitate that, choose any favorable topic or object for you to focus on, concentrate on, so that you could bring the mind down to the pace like that of a natural rhythm of breathing. If anyone is finding difficult to focus on any chosen object, such as the breath or so, it would be good to take 3 or more rounds of deep, deliberate breathing. When you do so, try to feel the sensations of the breathing, along with the mind being aware of it, almost to the point of becoming it, and then slowly settle into natural rhythm of breathing. Where you let the breathing just happen on its own, in whatever way it requires to be, irrespective of whether the rounds are even or not, regular, irregular. Irrespective of that, let it be just as natural as possible. Let's now take a few minutes to cultivate a proper motivation. In Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemo, when he begins by telling us how to actually conduct the practice. He puts meditation into perspective by saying that from time immemorial, from time beginningless, we have always been under the control of our mind, not the other way around. And the mind instead has been following the directions of the afflictions and its rude ignorance, not other positive qualities that it could have generated, that it could have arisen into. But mostly it has been following the dictates of afflictions. That has been the way from beginningless time. Who knows why? But that has been the case, and it's quite evident from our own example right now. Even in the midst of having met Dharma, that always picks at these afflictions. More good, particularly their root general, their captains in the form of self-centeredness, and the great general, self-grasping. Nonetheless, our mind is so difficult to listen to it, let alone change to this effort. But at the same time, if we keep persisting, then yes, the resistance will loosen up, and eventually it will have to give in. And in many of you, it may have already done so in some way or the other. So that's a great encouragement. So having seen a glimpse of what the mind can do, other than what it has been always been doing, how this change is possible, even if it is a little bit, it shows us that yes, if we keep persisting in our positive ways, in our positive pursuits, mind would have no other choice but to listen and eventually relent to this effort. So keeping that in mind, we tell to ourselves, ask ourselves, how best can I use my life? What way of living would be something that you would unquestionably approve of when we ourselves are on our deathbed and look back into our life? Irrespective of whether we believe in lives after now, or if we think that this is the one and only life, irrespective of that, think of what would it be by which we can be assured that the life that we have lived has been spent well. Undoubtedly, being of help to others is the most noble thing that we can do. Just merely serving oneself, that's something even the animals do naturally, and they do very well, including insects and all this, even maybe microbes, tiny organisms. They take care of themselves, attending to their needs. In some cases, we far lag behind them even in pursuing self-interest. Whereas spending the whole life serving oneself, even if successfully in whatever ways we understand it, the life would have been wasted. We would not have made any headway in the true sense of the word in having lived the so-called precious human rebirth or precious human birth. Kind of a birth equipped with this marvelous brain that is capable of thinking far, planning ahead, caring expansively, and developing it immensely. See, if we could all agree that yes, provided we can, at any given time, the best would be to serve others, make others happy, to put others ahead of oneself, irrespective of our spiritual worldview or our personal worldview, be that aligning to believing in life after life or just this one and only life. If we agree on this, and also agree on the fact that by serving others, we would have even served ourselves better, far better off. Not that this has to be the inspiration or motivation behind helping others, but that's just the natural byproduct of helping others. Whereas if we just merely focus on ourselves, even allowing that we were successful, we would have only served ourselves. We would only earn our own interest, not that of others. Whereas thinking of others genuinely, sincerely, and working for others, one would have not only served others and benefited others, but also as a byproduct, without having to think about it, one's own interest, genuine, lasting, worthy interest would have been served. So think along these lines. See if you have difficulty agreeing to this. If so, address this. Think through it. If you already agree with this, think of how many levels of serving others there could be. There can be that are within your reach, be that in your aspiration level, be that in your actual action level, be that in your preparation level. Feel determined, set an intention to keep doing this, to even up it from a Buddhist perspective, particularly following the Mahayana tradition. The highest of such aspiration of serving others would be to pursue full awakening, full fulfillment of one's potential in the form of Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, while at the same time committing to doing one's best in the meantime until one makes it there, in serving others as well. That's all. Feel motivated to use this session in making progress in this direction, be that through stronger agreement, stronger determination, commitment, even new insights, new ideas, or being clear about how better one could have done what one has done, and just wait for the opportunity to deliver it. Okay, so now the motivation is set, and and I have the free hand to say whatever I like, because you asked whatever you think is suitable, say it. Not that I would know it. I would ask my own gurus to channel their direction through me. So we are on page 279. We made big headway. See, 2 pages. That's a lot. Each has so many words. Each word has so many letters. And that's not even including the spaces between them. Okay, before we call it a done deal with the first part of the chapter 12, I want to dwell a little bit on the very last sentence. That's on top of page 279. Okay, so last time we said since the mind has the natural capacity to be aware and to understand when all obscurations have been removed, it will be able to directly perceive all phenomena, including directly perceiving them from the Prasangika point of view, simultaneously, directly perceiving all phenomena simultaneously. And that includes the two truths, right? Both the two truths simultaneously. Okay, we talked about it and tried our best to, at the very least, have some sense of how that might be possible, how that might feel like. Again, wasn't it today after lunch, the recitation ended with appearance emptiness? It's always a challenge. When I have appearance, I lose emptiness. When I have emptiness, I lose appearance. Now I'm trying to make this eye see the emptiness and this eye see appearance, and kind of look at them sternly and say, you just focus on emptiness, you on appearance, okay, and do the best and bring them together. And if it helps, even do like this, they will come together. Okay. Anyway, now that's not where I wanted to focus today. Or start today. Today I want to start from the very last sentence. A Buddha's omniscient mind is able to realize simultaneously both veiled and ultimate truth with a single consciousness. I remember very clearly, Venerable, when using this term veiled, we had a series of back and forth. Veiled truth. I mean, it stands for conventional truth, and the other one is ultimate truth. But here we are calling it the veiled truth. And the Tibetan term is Kunzup Tempa. There it is not so much the object itself is the veiled. The observer is the veiled. The observer is the one with abstraction. The observer is the one with the what do you call handicap? The observer is the handicap, not being able to see everything, and in whatever he sees through the veil. So everything that is seen by this obstructed, handicapped consciousness, which is hampered, which for which it's seeing the object clearly, is hampered by some veil in between. So any object that comes under this topic or under this purview becomes the conventional truth, although it has to be little nuanced, because even emptiness is seen indirectly by an inferential consciousness, right? And that inferential consciousness has a veil between its object emptiness and itself. Everything conceptual is necessarily veiled in seeing its object, in that it's always mediated. It doesn't see its object directly because there is a mediator in between. That mediator is called generic. I don't know for want of a better English term to make sense. It is called generic image, but that's direct translation from Tibetan Tenzin. Some call it meaning generality, or even worse. So here it is not so much the objects themselves are the veiled, but the observer is the veiled. And in a way, it comes out the same, that since the observer is veiled, and through this veil, it sees its objects, its corresponding objects. The objects get veiled. But here is the nuance is here. We virtually define the two truths, ultimate truth and conventional truth. Even the translation ultimate truth is not a perfect word choice, because this word for which we call it ultimate, and then we stay put on it. So because we have to be consistent in Tibetan, by being consistent using the same word, it doesn't necessarily mess up or add to a possible misunderstanding. But in English, it does. And anyway, so I will not go there because that will lead me to discussing the different schools. We will stick with Prasangika Madhyamika. So this way of calling the two truths, which encompasses everything. By the way, even the truth is a problem for me. Is the book the truth? Is book a truth? That's so strange, right? Everything is truth, because everything is included within the true truth. Either one has to be ultimate truth or veiled truth. So that means my mala is the truth. You are a truth. Falsehood is the truth. False is truth. Yeah, even calling the Four Noble Truths the truth is a problem. It's about the pain itself, not about the truth of the pain. It's not the truth of pain. It's rather the true pain, the true suffering, the true cause of suffering, the true path, the true cessation. Not truth about them. So likewise, the same problem is here. But there's no better option. So we stick to it, and we have a mutual understanding that this is not the usual truth that we speak of. No, rather pointing to anything. So what I was going to point to is that this way of calling the two groups of phenomena, within which everything is included. Calling these two groups by this name is giving us some clue, or as I said, even gives us some kind of a way of defining the two groups of phenomena. So in the veiled truth category, those are things which are only true to a veiled consciousness, not to an unveiled ultimate consciousness. That which is only true to a veiled consciousness, not to an ultimate consciousness. So, whereas in the case of the ultimate truth are those truths or those things which may be true to a veiled, but not only to that, even as well to an ultimate consciousness. I mean, this is, I think Geshe Dadul mentioned this, spelled this out very clearly. Lo kunzoba tenzin jingmoro tenzam. More particularly, this veiled consciousness in relation to which this whole group is identified, is the self-grasping. The veiled consciousness in the form of self-grasping is the subject here. And anything that is only true to a self-grasping consciousness, not to an ultimate consciousness, is all necessarily conventional truth. And on the other hand, in the case of the ultimate truth, it doesn't need to be true only to an ultimate truth. It could be true also to a veiled truth, but not only to that, but also to an ultimate consciousness. So that's how it makes a difference. Are you clear on this? Let me say one time. There are things like cups and mugs and computer are things that are true only in the face of a veiled consciousness, not through a ultimate consciousness. But phenomena like emptiness is true not only to a veiled consciousness, but also to an ultimate consciousness. Okay, I will leave it there, and and kind of make sense of this way of calling it differently, because in Tibetan we call them differently. That same conventional truth is called Kunzop Temba, Tanye Temba, like that. So that's why Venerable had to come up with a different way of calling it, so that it could match with that. And besides, it brings up a whole new perspective of teasing it away from the other group of phenomena. By the way, the other group has very, very few members, but as strong. The other one is overcrowded. But when it comes to fighting, they don't even think of it. So if it were a voting system, then of course it will make a difference, but not otherwise. Anyway, so the reflections. Let's now review the various factors that obstruct the mind's knowing phenomena. Obviously, from a Buddhist perspective, the term obstruct itself takes us straight to obstructions or obscurations, which are true popular ones, the so-called afflicted or afflictive obscuration and cognitive obscuration. But then sometimes we even speak of a third obscuration, right? And what do you call that third obscuration? Pardon? I see. Oh, the latencies are included within the cognitive obscuration. In the way, by the way, in the Prasangika Madhyamika system, it's only the latencies that make up the cognitive obscuration. Even subgrasping attitude itself is included within the afflicted. But we speak of a third obscuration. It's called nyumju kitiba. What do you call nyumju? Absorption or stabilization? Sometimes it's stabilization. Sumeki nyumju. I think it is absorption. Pardon? Oh, that's not equilibrium. Here in this case, we're using the same term that we use for the 4 levels of formless concentration practices. What do you call that? Absorption, I think. Absorption. So absorptive, absorptional. Because if I say absorptive, it's like, oh, that obscuration absorbs something. So I have no way but to call it absorptional. Absorptional obscuration. By the way, that is identified to emphasize the obscurations specific to cultivating concentration practices. There can be some arhats who would have become arhat, thus having completely eliminated afflictions, even including its root, its seeds, but haven't paid attention to the concentration and have yet to and only made do with shamatha and vipassana, not bringing it all the way up to absorption, past the 9, past the another not the 9, another 5, 6 steps to that. There's a name for that. Such a arhat. Pardon? I see. Yeah, sometimes people call it dry. I don't know why do you call that. We call it Sharab Jangdul, one who has been liberated only through the means of wisdom, not with the aid of concentration. Of course, not completely no concentration, but concentration at the level of absorption.
Well, I'm thinking maybe not. I don't know the word absorptional obscuration. The only thing I could think of was those things called dysfunctional tendencies, but I don't think that has to do with concentration.
I see.
I can't think of a term that the term would be.
Yeah, we usually use this term yonju, which is for absorption, and it has direct connection with the cultivation of high-level concentration. High-level concentration, not even that of the formless realm, but even of the form realm. The first form realm stabilization. By the way, we choose to call the form concentrations as stabilizations and the formless concentrations as absorptions. But in Tibetan, we also use, on occasions, the absorption term all across the board. Yeah. So that's specific to concentration. So they could be, which is to suggest that one doesn't necessarily have to develop high-level concentration beyond and above shamatha and vipassana to attain maybe to attain dry liberation, to attain bare liberation, right? Oh, now it makes sense. Let me have some water. So the other one is called Yige Chanyin, number 12. One who is liberated on both the accounts, from both the parts, from both the points, from both sides, which means from the afflictions side as well as from the obstacles to the cultivation of absorption. Anyway, yeah. But then there can be so many obstructions to knowing, to the mind's capacity of knowing. Our own bad karmas, negativities, wrong way of thinking. What was that? What's the other one? Chinjalo. What kind of attention? Yeah, inappropriate attention. All other afflictions, they can all serve as a means of obstructing the mind, in clouding the mind, and thus it serves as obstructing it from seeing objects clearly. Okay. A Buddha's omniscient mind is able to realize simultaneously both veiled and ultimate truth with a single consciousness. So contemplate that all of these can be eliminated. Yeah, for this one has to really know the process by which the afflictions arise. From the Prasangika Madhyamika point of view, I think in Tsongkhapa's illumination of the intent, with its root in Chandrakirti's entering the middle way, that in turn having its source in Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise, that in turn in the sutras, it speaks of a sequence by which an affliction arises. Of course, all of the tenet schools come up with their own version of how afflictions arise. Of course, they have to come up with; they cannot escape, because the whole point is how to address afflictions. For that to be successful, one has to at least come up with some theory of how it comes about. So, just to give you a taste, in the case of Abhidhamma, which is considered a little lower tenet school, it says afflictions arise because of three things. You have the object nearby, and you have afflictions uneliminated, and in between the connection, you unknowingly, voluntarily provide that connection. We unwillingly, yet voluntarily, I don't know whether it makes sense or not, because there's no one pushing us to do that. We do it. So how else to call it than voluntarily? But not with full awareness. We provide the connection, and they connect, and then the communication happens. You have the seed of affliction within you, and there is no object. attractive, non-attractive, etc., or neutral, whatever. And then you provide the connection. You say, oh, you either in the form of a judgment, in the form of dislike, in the form of criticism, whatever. And that connects with the object, and with that seed within you, it gives rise to afflictions. Say there is a good-looking object, and you have attachment within you. If you don't provide the connection, it's just there, and you don't have to be attached to it. But when you provide the connection, say, oh, "That's so good, 100% good, so good," without even the slightest defect at all, you're providing the connection. Now in Georgia, we call the Georgia power that provides the power. Here you call it I power, I power, iPhone, I power, I whatever. So you provide that power. You call it I power. And because of that, you generate affliction. And it is very, very empowering, because it says that even if you are not arhat yet, and you have afflictions within you, you can still stay free or stay away from problem, even in the midst of objects surrounding you, because you have the final say whether you provide the connection or not. If you keep it from going there, it's like you can go freely through all the objects without bumping into them, without I don't know. Yeah, one of these days I'll do a talk with the meaning, but all the expressions that I've been picking up from all of you. Yeah, it's quite interesting. And I sometimes worry if I might forget my Tibetan. But for sure, I will improve my English. And one day I will show you what I've collected and make them into a bunch of meaningful expressions. So, yeah, so that's their take. But in the case of Prasankika Madhyamika, it's a little fine-tuned. It says that for afflictions, necessarily, the very foundation has to be self-grasping. The very foundation of an affliction is, the very lifeline is provided by self-grasping. You grasp at something, not necessarily by adding any color to it. As good, as inherently good, inherently bad, inherently neutral, nothing. You just have to just see it inherently existent. And then based on that, you then add a layer to it by saying it is not just inherently existent, but inherently good, inherently bad, inherently negative, etc. But that, adding that color will give direction which way you're going. That's usually called chinji. Chinji logalo. Which is, I think, according to this translation of inappropriate attention, it would be an inappropriate perception, inappropriate, what do you call, addition, color do you add to it? And yes, this is very clearly reflected in this statement in the fundamental treatise on the wisdom, where it says, "Let on yomung se better." If you aspire for liberation, then the way to attain liberation is by ceasing by ceasing karma, and by ceasing the afflictive actions and the afflictions that give rise to them. But the question is, how do you seize them? Because the so the next question is, where do le and nyamon, karma and affliction come from? So that I can work on severing them and thus be liberated. And then the next line says, le do nyamon namdole. Le do nyamon namdole. The karma, the afflicted actions, and so if you are seeking liberation, the only way to succeed in that is by eliminating afflicted karma actions induced by the afflictions and the afflictions themselves. These two are to be eliminated. But the question arises where these two come from. The next line says, these two, even by calling them by their names, the afflicted karma and the affliction, they come from namdo. Namdo is conceptual, distorted conceptual thoughts. But here it is specifically used in a particular sense. Not conceptual thoughts in general are considered to be the cause of the afflictions and the actions induced by them. It is referring to this so-called the inappropriate coloration. You may call it inappropriate coloration. And where does this come from? That and where does this inappropriate coloration or discoloration, which is responsible for giving rise to afflictions and the afflicted actions arise? Where does this conceptual thought or conceptual distortion come from? This comes from grasping at elaboration, grasping at fabrication. Not just fabrication in general, but fabrication to the tune of seeing things as inherently existent. Now the question is, okay, now I know the culprit is here, right? The self-grasping. How do you deal with it? By emptiness. That elaboration, which is a direct translation, but it means grasping at inherent existence, is addressed by no other forces but by the understanding of emptiness. Not just an understanding. I mean, of course, you have to begin with understanding, and eventually integrating it, embodying it, and then making it. And then making it a forceful antidote. Forceful antidote, not just barely understanding emptiness, but and understanding of emptiness with a force to able to really punch, really. If I have this as a gesture, then it will be punch, right? Really hit at the self-grasping. In this regard, it is important to. So here, I mean, as you have seen the steps, the suffering, right? Suffering comes from afflictions and the actions induced by them. Or you could say, if you want to expand it, suffering comes from the karmic actions. They in turn from the afflictions. That in turn from inappropriate distortion or conceptual thoughts. That in turn comes from grasping at inherent existence. And that is addressed only by understanding emptiness. So there is a in between. There's something in between. between the self-grasping and the afflictions and the karma. And that is directly translated, it means distorted uh, distorted mind or misrepresenting mind. So anyway, it's I very clearly remember my teacher giving another analogy of a tanka painting of the canvas on which you draw the painting. It is like the self-grasping itself. Now, based on that, you make the initial grids and the drawing. That's like the next step of what you call distorted or inappropriate coloration. And based on that, you generate attraction, judgment, hate, annoyance, etc. And based on that, you then engage in action that leads to suffering. So this part is very essential. So one has to kind of trace the sources and then be able to really understand or really pinpoint the culprit and also see how it is the culprit. And not just how it does, but what it is. It has to be known very, as we say in the Heart Sutra, correctly, perfectly, completely, right? It has to be understood. When mere making effort will not be enough. There's no one going to give any concession. It has to be squarely emptiness understanding that really fits squarely against the self-grasping. That's the only way by which it could attack it. But it is not an easy thing. Understanding emptiness in its fullest form it means really understanding all the nuances and as well as solving all seeming contradictions, all seeming misfits, mismatches. And more importantly, to be able to really situate conventional truth and the ultimate truth one into another without anything straying away. That's why the difficulty is not in seeing the first level of dependent origination or the second level of dependent origination, but rather the third level of dependent origination. Although in the words of Geshe Dadul only speaks of two dependent origination. And I can perfectly see that point there. But I prefer speaking of three levels of dependent origination. And it has its sources in Tsongkhapa's writings as well. So the first two levels of dependent origination are a pointer from afar to emptiness, but not quite there. But the last one, that of dependent designation, of reducing everything to mere designation, nothing, mere name, nothing objective. Almost to the point of sounding like things are not there. That's not quite it. Things are there, but not from there. If at all it makes sense. Things are there. Things are where they are, but not from where they are at present, but from a projecting mind, conceptual, conventional, from a subject. So it's not quite idealistic as that of this Chittamatra, where it says the consciousness just extends to everywhere the things are. If it could withdraw it, it could just draw everything in, and then nothing is left there. Not quite that kind of mind dependence, but mind dependence in the sense of being necessarily being merely labeled, nothing but merely labeled. And that first, that needs to be understood very clearly, because there are so many subtle points by which it could go wrong, or by which one could think one has understood it, one has got it, but not quite. So it would be good to bring up what the nuances are, it is this but not this, it is this but not this, like that, and then bring in expressions like not seeing is the supreme seeing, right? Not seeing is supreme seeing. Emptiness, nothing but a mere negation, nothing but that, and yet at the same time it doesn't contradict with conventional truth. Things are dependent on causes, on and are regular in their causal relationship, causal dependence, yet at the same time not an iota of any objectivity in there, but merely labeled. But at the same time, it is not saying that, but just by merely labeling we can make everything. It's not saying that. For making, we have to make off efforts. But whatever you do and you succeed, you unsucceed, whatever, however big a structure you may make, while making it, when have made it, when destroyed it, at all given times, when you look very carefully, they all will be nothing but labels, unfindable. So that's why we insist on saying emptiness is pointing to the status of, or the mode of existence of things, how they exist, not how they are made. That is to be understood. It's not that mind is making everyone, right? It's not like that. Oh, anyway, this part is, and then after having understood it, see that it is mistaken. It doesn't, what do you call, align with the reality. The reality is just that grasping at an inherent existence. Inherent existence doesn't align with the reality, and emptiness it aligns with reality. So that one has to see very carefully, and so that one could then expose self-grasping as being a false, and then see how that is responsible, very necessary for all the afflictions. And that way you could see afflictions, no matter how strong, whatever they may be, they can be debased. They can be brought down by pulling the rug under their feet. You just take the self-grasping up, it's all dissolved. Like we had the meditation in the daytime, everything dissolved. Everything bosses down once the self-grasping is taken off. Everything in terms of afflictions. So that connection has to be seen. Otherwise, one would, no matter how much one tries, one wouldn't get any conviction. That is very crucial. That's the reason why in certain scriptures, just as in Geshe Dadul yesterday's teaching, he pointed out how, although he did it in a way where it is balanced, he said emptiness and inherent and dependent origination are both the most cherished what do you call essential teaching of Buddha, and that they are the same thing. But they are the same thing with a nuance. They're not quite the exact same thing. But and anyway, So that part has to be understood very carefully. And then having understood it intellectually is not enough. Of course, one has to start from there. Particularly with regard to this topic of emptiness, for those who are studying it anew, using reason and reason-induced understanding is the only way to go about. Some who manage by not studying much and meditating on the mind and eventually getting it is because they have done their homework in the past life. Not that they just got away with it. That is the only way. Like in the case of Shariputra, when he met Aswajit and asked, "Who is your teacher? What is his teaching?" All he said is the 4 lines. And there's not much there, right? I mean, everyone would say, "What the big deal there? What the heck?" Things come from causes. The causes have been pointed out by the Buddha. The cessation of that cause has also been taught by Tathagata. Okay, so what? There's not much there. No details there. Once you bring the details, then we can discuss. Because what is the expression? Something is in the details. The devil is in the details, right? So please come with the details. Then let's see if we could find the devils there. But this is just general. But it clicked because of his past acquaintation, past acquaintance, past habituation. That's the reason why we have. Okay, I will not go there. So, I mean, here contemplating all these can be eliminated is just a short sentence here, but it is a pretty heavily loaded, heavy-duty statement here. Sometimes people kind of shy away from studying philosophy and being, what do you call, intellectual. But that's because in the West, I may say, when I say, okay, in the West, philosophy is pursued for the sake of philosophy, for the sake of knowledge. I think Professor Garfield offered to teach philosophy early on in Buddhist dialectic school. And so in the course of discussion, they talked about knowledge and that the whole philosophy is about knowledge. And someone asked, and what do we do with knowledge? What, after we gain knowledge? Then you become knowledgeable. What about the problems inside? What about them? What's the connection? I don't know. That's not the case in philosophy, in Buddhism. It's all oriented. It is all soteriological. It all is aimed at this project of pursuing lasting happiness by really breaking down the details of the causal sequence. And there, the most crucial thing is cracking this facade of truth put up by self-grasping. Until and unless we do that, we just keep on circling. We may go up and bounce up and bounce down, up, bounce down. You have this show, TV show called Whack-A-Mole. It's a game. Yeah, whack-a-mole. You keep hitting it, you succeed in putting it down, but it pops up because it hasn't been uprooted. That would be the case, even with bodhicitta also. That's very clear in Tsongkhapa's writing also, in other writings also, in the ones that we recite, right? Without this, there's no, even in, I think, is that Acharya Aryadeva who said, Shigunyiba meva. There's no other door to liberation but through emptiness. So you better like emptiness. Be friend with it. Know it in and out. Totally be friend with it and feel comfortable with it. Otherwise, you can't get through that gate. You just go back and put back and put back and put, not go through the gate. If not through the first gate, then not the second, third, fourth. Paragate, Parasamgate is out of question. Okay, so it is pretty loaded. It's a heavy duty statement. Rest in the awareness of the potential of your mind to become omniscient. Rest? Is this the time to rest? Do you have time to lose? No time to lose. Time, the clock is ticking. When would that last day come? When would that last day be? No telling. But here, resting is resting in the awareness of the potential of your mind to become omniscient, and that also includes that has been very well explained and very well, what do you call, furnished with many approaches to it. The potential of mind to become omniscient, which means the potential of mind to become to assert or to reassert its primordial free nature. Now here we can use the word primordial. From beginningless time, mind has never been penetrated by afflictions. So it's because of that freedom that we have the chance of surfacing that, bringing it to the surface. Okay, I will leave it there. Now let's move on. Otherwise, Venerable, when she comes, she will say, "What did you do?" You were supposed to choose from any topic you want. So that's with the assumption that this would be too short as a chapter. Okay, let's see. Is liberation possible? To review, disturbing emotions and wrong views are called afflictions because when they arise in the mind, they all afflict us and disturb our mental peace. By the way, the question of mind is very interesting. As I was sharing the other day, one of these sessions, to really try to see that there's a mind within us. Which could have come from before we were born, from before, which may not have just started with, or started with this life, or even later after our birth, when only the brain has fully developed. We have to have a sense of this mind, though closely working with the brain and other physiological elements, but in its essential nature, it has to be a continuum of its own. Of course, always connected with a physical energy or physical companion with it. Of course, that is only mentioned. The mere mention of that happens or begins from the highest yoga tantra, where everything ends. So until then, it has been kept away, but it's all pointing to that. So anyway, it's very interesting and very important to really assure oneself that yes, where the neuroscience or the science in general is trending is not quite the full story. As I was telling you, if brain were everything, including what mind is, then yes, if we could imagine the full awakening of all the potentials of the mind, we will be pretty crazy. Fully crazy, fully compassionate, fully angry, or like that, all at a time. Like that. Because the centers of the brain for these emotions would have been the same, would have been there. It's not that you take it away, you there. And then you are talking of the neurons, they are kind of gaining full culmination. That means angry at the best of you, at the everything at the best, even including anger, compassion, everything. I don't think we want to achieve that kind of a state. That's no fun. That's one thing. Now the another thing is, in the scriptures or in our actual life, we see people differ in their mental capacities, in their mental attitudes and mental dispositions. Particularly if we take the instance of afflictions, we are very different in what affliction we are strong in, or if at all we are strong in any particular affliction, or if at all we fall under the influence of the afflictions. There could be three categories. One who is very strong in affliction and in a particular one, another not strong in any of them, yet at the same time getting upset, all of this, getting all the flavors of it. And then third one, who hardly gets disturbed. And sometimes we could see that even in the animals also. There are some kind animals. From the scripture, we speak of that as how one had spent in the past life. Those who have indulged in them, had dwelled in them, they get that particular trend of affliction stronger. Those who have not dwelled in them, but at the same time not put any effort in addressing them, those are the mediocre ones. Those who have put special effort in attacking them, those are the ones who are tamed. It doesn't get that irritated. Otherwise, how would we explain this from neuroscience point of view? And then in Shantideva's text, he speaks of past life, not by saying somebody remembered this, somebody remembered this, somebody remembered this. That could be used, but that's not a universal reasoning. And that's like really coming to the last straw of it. Instead, he says, see how the dispositions carry on. And how we develop over lifetimes is by persisting on those practices. And then special practices include, we don't speak of it so much, or has not come up so much in our discussions on the karma and whatnot. But there's a big role that the prayers play. I am calling it prayer. It's similar to dedication, but it's like directing it. So you have worked hard, you have earned some money. Now your decision is whether to use it for good purpose or bad purpose. So there's no guarantee unless you dedicated it, unless you have earmarked it. Once it is earmarked, nobody can touch it except for that purpose. Likewise, earmarking it. Otherwise, you could have earned a good merit, but then earmark it for a bad purpose. It could result there, and that's also in doing with cause and effect. So there's not much time there. Yeah. Anyway, with regard to the third contemplation or third reflection, the potential of mind to become omniscient has to be ascertained by using several means. His Holiness was suggesting even doing like this. You open your eyes and face it to a picture of a Buddha or whatnot. After you have seen it clearly, then push yourself to completely ignore it and bring up something in the mind, and let the mind be clear on that object while the eye is squarely on the figure that you are totally ignoring it, and trying to see if you could still come up with the picture in the mind, and then make it clearer and clearer, clearer and clearer. And what does that reflecting agent looks like? That's one way of kind of assuring oneself that, in a way, nobody doubts that we have a mind, right? But at the same time, it pushes hard as to whether it is one with the brain and that's going to stop with the brain. We might say, maybe not. Then where does it put our practice for aspiration, for aspiring for a better life next life, better birth next life, liberation thereafter, even full awakening for the sake of all sentient beings? So it's very crucial, because otherwise the aspirations will remain mere words. So he's even suggesting, as I've shared earlier, waking up the first thing when you are kind of hazy, not quite awake, but not quite in sleep, in a hazy state of mind. See if you could catch your mind, where there's great chance for the mind to be not obsessed on anything. Complete blank, mere clarity. Clarity in the sense of mere reflecting, mere understanding, mere knowing, but not knowing any content specifically. That way, ascertain, yes, there is such a thing as mere knowing and mere luminosity. And then also think of since I cannot push through within this time, then also think of the different levels of the mind. Our wakeful time, that level, we call it gross. Anyway, that's another level type of mind. When we sleep, that's another level of mind there. Within sleep, when we are dreaming, lucid dreaming or dreaming, there's another level. There's mind definitely there, but of a different nature. And then deeper in deep sleep, there should be mind. We should not have gone mindless. By the way, we do not go mindless, not in the usual expression, but by the way, we do not go mindless at any time since our birth till our death. Even when somebody is in coma, he or she has mind. What about before that? Why does it stay put in the lifetime? Why does it never sever? If so, then how could it have started anew at the birth? Why it can't be a continuation from before? There is expression, somebody is out of mind. They're not out of mind. They're in their mind in their worst way. They're in their mind in their worst form. Somebody has taken the better of them. That's a very interesting expression. Afflictions have taken the better of them, right? What would be a better thing for us? To be in control of ourselves? And that is lost to afflictions. That's why the afflictions got the better of us. So at no given time, at least in our birth, there's no time when we have no mind. Why is it so? Why that has to be? We may say, oh, there's always brain there. But then there are weird things happening. I mean, even among the animals also, there's some who don't have any brain as such, just a mere stand of nerve. Even among humans also, there are people with 90% of the brain just filled with water. How we account for them capable of things that we are not supposed to be? And then there are even neuroscientists, hard, do you say hard nose? Hard nose, hard headed neuroscientists who themselves went through coma and stayed there for long and then came out, and all of their neuroscientific lines don't make any sense at all. They come out a totally different person. And there's so many weird things are happening at the operations theaters also. So that's how, in that line, we speak of the mind at the level at the time of sleep, deep sleep is not it's not even called the subtlest. There are subtle, or you could say subtler, when one has fainted, etc. During that time also, mind is still there, but it's a subtle mind. And then there's a group of three which are called the subtlest mind. They are called subtlest mind. They could have been called subtler, because there is even a subtler one, but they are so subtle that they are called the subtlest. And the other one is called the subtlest of the subtlest. And there's a purpose for that. So the subtlest of the subtlest is the death in our ordinary life. The point of death is when the subtlest of the subtlest mind arises. Death is not a time when there's no mind. Even death has mind. We make a difference between death and dead. Person is dead when the body has no mind in it. The person is in the state of death, not dying, Dying already passed. One is in the state of death. That's when all of these subtler consciousnesses have subsided, with the subtlest of the subtlest having no choice but to surface naturally. So those are things to be considered in terms of the potential of mind, as well as in terms of what mind is. So the grosser they are, the more dependent they are on their on physiology, because the grosser they are, the grosser their own mount energies. The accompanying mount energy, which we spoke in terms of the subtlest of the subtlest, and because of that we say it is never ever only mind, but always with a accompanying energy. Just as it has its own corresponding subtlest of the subtlest energy, likewise the grosser ones have their own corresponding grosser level of physical component. And because of that, it affects the body. And we don't see the mind because mind is non-physical and whatnot, but it is there with that, with functioning there with its inseparable entity of energy. And that's bumping with bumping with brain cells and neurons and whatnot. Anyway, so that's a theory, but not total baloney, because yeah, given the weird things happening, just as someone in the University of Virginia's clinical department said, this world is bizarre, more bizarre than we think. So particularly in the realm of consciousness, there's so much going on there. So speaking of the potential of the mind, and particularly in terms of its subtleties, as well as its being not penetrated by the afflictions, thus being free from the beginning, and like that of gold, this is a good analogy. You unearth gold, but no matter how old it may be, how deep down you find it, it can always be separated from its roots, and its purity can be asserted. But there was not necessarily a time when it was pure gold with no stains at all. That doesn't necessarily have to be. But when we found it, it is with stains, and the stains have not penetrated into them. So likewise, the mind is. With this, we have the chance of reasserting its purity and reclaiming it by deliberate attempt of cleansing it. With this, I stop here, and let's do the dedication.